shifting by systematizing subtle energy, using actually psychological and athletic models.
Is an assessment, and then using what are called constraints, which are really just tools, structures that body learns around.
Really, it can be as simple as what's your main chakra that describes who you really are, to make some choices based on that. Better able to change, creating assessments, we're creating tools, we're creating ways to support people.
So I'm going to give anybody who's listening now a task or a constraint to do with one of your practices. So I just figured we'd jump right into talking about systemization today.
Excellent.
Yeah. So, systemization, what do you think?
So you and I have been talking about shifting, not my business model, but in some ways how I can support people by systematizing subtle energy. And it's beyond the chakras and the subtle rest of the subtle body. You know, it's about using actually, which is really cool, psychological and athletic models in order to help people improve themselves, with me and the people in my business helping them do that, rather than, kind of like creating a dependency. I've always thought it was important that people know I'm not actually doing the healing work on them. That's a matter of them and their guides and whatever they believe in, and it's not me. My gift is labeling and pointing things out. So we've been talking about creating a way that people can help themselves even more. I think is fantastic that you created this model. It's clean.
Well, I didn't make any. The models already existed in terms of things. It's just reframing. Like, see, I don't mind talking about something like this on the podcast because, like, if people are gonna listen, they've already invested this amount of time into something where they're able to. I'm gonna turn my phone off on D&D. Where they've already shown enough interest to try to understand like the nuances and things like that, because
Right.
I think human beings have this this very beneficial gift of not understanding the psychological aspects of business, not understanding the psychological things of sales and marketing. The goal of like marketing is to tell a story and guide someone through a story. The thing about it is like when I sent all the voice notes to you guys yesterday talking about what I'm going to explain here in a moment, which is the Constraint Led Approach, and kind of unpacking what dynamic systems theory basically is if I sit here and tell somebody like do the CLA or
Well, nobody knows what any of these words mean that you're saying.
Well, that's the point.
Right.
It's too dense of information. But when somebody's invested in time into watching a long-form video like this, then they'll be more willing to listen and understand things like that. So
one of the things that you're helping to redo within my system, within my business, which is about energy healing, and I'm basically a teacher. I love teaching. I love bringing through information, new data, nuances, helping people better their lives, like in a very real way. One of the things you've been talking to me about, because you're literally an MBA expert, is brand new to that I can see to the energy healing field. The model here in the energy healing field, which I've typically followed, is you call a healer, they use their intuition or some mechanism to perceive what's going on, and then either they do the work or they bring in guides or they enable the person, to make the subtle energy shifts. And what you're bringing into this process is, how can someone like me still access my intuition and support somebody so they know what's happening, what are the causes of their issues, what's possible for them to do, how can they shift their perception? But you're bringing in a model where me and my business people can help provide an assessment and then help somebody create their own changes, which is really hardly ever done in the energy healing world.
So any successful system has, so now I'll kind of explain. So basically, like the system that we will be implementing going forward is an assessment, and then using what are called constraints, which are really just tools and structures that the body learns around, and those are rigid. Those don't change from person to person. Every single human being learns the same way, based off of three things, which is the environment. So like this room would be the environment, the task, which is us talking, and then the organism, which is like my lived world experience, my body, my emotion center, anything that has to do physiologically, psychologically, or anatomically with me. Those don't change from person to person. That stays constant, because that's how we learn. And I'll get into some of that nitty gritty into detail. And then it's simply giving basically games. At jiu-jitsu we call them games, which are tasks or drills, or where we manipulate the environment, the task, we manipulate the organism. That one's a little bit harder. That does happen, but that usually is a byproduct of other things. For example, like in sports, it would be like if I lift and I put on 10 pounds of muscle, my body will now that's fine, it's just the microphone. My body will now self-organize differently because I've literally changed the structure of my body. And all this works because our body is one of the leading theories in the skill acquisition realm of things, is what's called a dynamic system. And a dynamic system basically means that it is a system that operates on a global structure and an independent structure. So
You mean like collective? Global would be collective?
global would be like all at once. So as like if we take the human body and look at that, for example, my body is made up of bones, muscle tissue, fascia, skin, organs, sensory inputs, nerves, things like that. So there is a individual piece to that, but they all collectively work together in a singular system. So if I move my arm up over my head, that structure is going to, that singular movement of moving up over my head, my body has to organize in that movement, the movement of my humerus, my shoulder muscles, my chest muscles,
your
my
rib muscles, your hips.
And that tissue lengthening here is going to contract here, which is going to affect things here. So it's basically like one of the leading sports scientists, I think it was like in the 90s, it's called Bernstein's degrees of freedom problem, which is there's over 300 bones in the body, there's over however many muscles, all these things, right? The amount of movement culpabilities of like movement affordances and things that people could do is seemingly infinite. So how does the central nervous system string together movements? Like even something as simple as walking, let alone a sports activity. So that's called the degrees of freedom problem. There's so much movement. I can move all these different ways. How does my system do that in a way where I'm not thinking about it?
So let me apply it to typical client issues, which there are thousands of them, to be honest. So I might work with somebody who's been sexually abused, and so they crave carbohydrates in order to repress those emotions. And so there's probably many, many, many different ways for them to approach food differently or to heal what's happened.
Sure.
So it's sort of like in the subtle world, what might be maneuvers, techniques, ideas, subtle energetics that can help somebody sit down and choose to eat just one piece of pizza and broccoli, not an entire pizza.
Sure. So, and that's where you have to kind of unpack the degrees of freedom problem a little bit more in that realm. Because my argument would probably be they're not probably trying to repress emotion, but they're trying to survive and cope the emotion and the pain.
I would agree. It's just those feelings are so horrific.
Totally.
And in energy realm, that's even more complicated because when when they're treated with abuse, they're not given something they do need. I call that missing forces. And so then you start to crave what's the substitute for what you need, which is comfort, recovery, somebody caring, understanding, whatever it might be. And so the dynamic really actually gets quite complicated in the body because you crave the substitute for the comfort or the safety. And then the body's immune system knows it's being cheated. So it actually attacks what you're giving that's been the substitute, and you set up an immune system issue. You set up a craving, autoimmune kind of a cycle or an addiction allergy cycle. So those are complicated for people to unpeel and to cope with.
Yeah. And it can get pretty rabbit holey in all of this, I guess, in the application of something like a dynamic system theory into more emotional, energetic work, which I don't fall under the energetic bucket. So I'm going to keep this in the emotional bucket for what I understand and believe in. And you can take...
Exactly.
So, but from the emotional landscape, there's two things that you have to understand for dynamic systems theory to really make sense. Is that one, the only thing that your system, the baseline level cares about is survival.
True.
It only cares about keeping you alive. It doesn't care about anything else.
Got it.
Okay. Two, it wants to take the path of least resistance.
True.
We always want to conserve energy because
that helps us survive.
It helps us survive. So now when we look at dynamic systems theory, one of the leading theories of skill acquisition is, I don't remember if it's this might not be the exact right term, but basically there is a central conductor in our brain that took all the sensory input that we receive, digests that information, and outputs that back for us to take action in the world.
Right.
Now, the problem with that theory is the world happens faster than the sensory input can go to our brain, digest itself, send itself back out. Because in this realm of survival, while that might only take a second is a very long time in the realm of
coping with stress or trauma or a stimulation.
Exactly.
Yes.
So Bernstein's solution to that was basically the body creates synergies that create connections through the tissue, and we react externally to the environment around the world. And then we perceive the world. So another kind of model that is very interesting that I've looked a few years ago back through is the brain and the body are what's called a predictive, theorized to be a predictive processor.
Yes, I've worked with that theory.
Predictive processing theory, which is why, so like for anybody listening, like if you've woken up in the middle of the night and you look at a coat rack and you're like, somebody's in the room with me, that's what predictive processing is it's taking available information based around the situations that it's being afforded, and it's making assumptions as a safety mechanism, because again, that sensory input can't go to because your brain can't see.
It has to go fast.
It has to go fast. And in those fast, it sometimes makes mistakes because it's predicting based upon information around the world.
And history, memory.
And history, yes, correct. So in that the body organizes its affordances, which affordances, I've said that a few times, just means culpabilities of like what you can do. And because our system is a dynamic system, emotions and physical experiences are processed the same way.
Right.
They're experienced the same way from a neurological and physiological standpoint. So if you change your emotions, I'm not saying you're going to, I'm not saying if you unpack a lot of like emotional trauma, all of a sudden you're going to go from like being able to like, let's say bench press like 200 pounds to 300 pounds. That's not how that works. But if you experienced a traumatic event doing something emotionally, your body will limit degrees of freedom in something in an effort to self-preserve.
Which is the same that occurs in the subtle energetics. So
an example would be like a sports performance anxiety.
Right.
How like somebody is no longer able to throw as hard, or maybe they can't run as fast as they once were, is because emotionally this traumatic event happened and the body is self-limiting from a degrees of freedom standpoint.
Right.
So it does not re-traumatize itself.
And I'll give some energetic examples. Let's say somebody was super intuitive as a kid and they could get pictures of what might happen. I just had somebody ask me a question like this, and then it shuts down because they got negative feedback for it. It's that gift is now limiting because it did not help them survive or fit in with the family system. Sure. And that's kind of an extreme one, too.
It can help like show the point that you're trying to get at,
but it shares that.
And I guess now we get into in dynamic systems and the constraint led approaches. So the analogy I wrote about earlier today is, so now we're going to get into what are called attractors and movement solutions. So the way I describe it is think of like a house in a tall grass field, and you have a lake, and then in this tall grass there's a well. Okay. You've had to get to your house every day from work. And originally when you got there, you walk through this tall grass field, you walk through the grass goes down for a second, pops right back up. Okay, but then you do that hundreds of thousands of times because you've been working for the last year, so it's 2 walks every day for a whole year. You've been living there for 5 years, you do the math. Eventually the grass stays down.
Flattened.
Yeah, stays flattened. That's called a movement solution, where you
just keep repeating over and over.
But if you take this grass field analogy, you could get to this place through any route. But again, now we're taking conservation of energy. We're taking like that we want to conserve the most amount of energy. You're going to find the fastest way from point A to point B to get through there. You have solved a problem to go from your car here, maybe the house is here, and you have to get around through that way.
Right.
Okay. So that's a movement solution, and your body has basically found the path of least resistance. Let's say now there's the analogy can work both ways. I'm going to use this as a little bit differently now. Okay. I'm going to take this well for 2 different examples because it does show 2 different things on how self-organization works. Because that's what you just did. You just self-organized around a problem. You had a task, which was to get to the house. You had the environment, which is a tall grass field. And then you have yourself, which is your ability to walk.
Right.
So now, let's say there's a well, and you find this path of least resistance. And then all of a sudden, there's a well of and there's water in the well. Mm-hmm. That's what's called an attractor. In this case, an attractor is they're called attractor valleys. And they are literally in the brain. They're points of stability that your your synapses and your synergies get stuck in. Now, attractors are not good or bad. They are, just as movement solutions are not good or bad. They are part of a self-organized system to find points of stability, because again, how much emotion do you feel, and movements and capabilities do you have from those emotions? Your body has to find ways to find points of stability, so it creates those attractor valleys. Now, in this case, this could be like a traumatized person that's created an attractor valley that is no longer serving them because they cannot get around it. So that leaves them with the capabilities of, they either have to carve new movement solutions around the attractor valleys and create a new attractor, or they can suffocate the attractor and not use it. So in this analogy, it would be like filling it up with dirt. And now you have suffocated the attractor valley, but the deeper the valley, the harder it is and the longer it takes. And I think the example about like that I wrote about today was, if you have a lake downstream, like you have a lake downstream from you, and that's kind of where you want your rainwater to filter through. Okay, like you live in this place and the rainwater would filter down through. But now you have this well there, and the well is like not quite down all the way, and say it's shallow enough for rainwater to go into, but not shallow enough where like it's going to start to flood. So every time it rains, when you go out into your grass is flooded. You know, because the natural flow of movement is being pulled in to this point of safety, or really, I should say, point of stability, and that's not serving anymore. So you want the rainwater to go to the lake and filter down, but it can't get to the point where it can actually filter down because it's getting stuck in the well, and now the well is flooding. And now what you would see is the grass is actually molding from the stream of rainwater, because those movement solutions are naturally getting pulled into that attractor valley.
So this is what trauma patterns do.
Correct.
Right. And I'll say, because I do the energetics of it, trauma patterns, yes, they can be emotional. Trauma patterns can be physical. Like, if I'm don't feel good about myself, I'm going to eat a cheesecake, which, right, whatever your trauma pattern and what seems to have in the past given you a better sense or helped you survive or helped you cope. All right.
Yep.
But all those trauma patterns also, frankly, get locked in the chakras. They get locked in the subtle energetics, which makes them even stronger and harder to get out of.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll put it on screen here and put the tweet in the description, but there was a neuroscientist I saw on Twitter that was talking about dynamic systems theory of people with OCD versus a normal brain. And they found, I don't have it on me, right? So I'm paraphrasing.
Right, you'll put it
here,
in there, right.
But basically the attractor valleys of somebody with OCD is deeper than a normal brain, which is why like when somebody gets into an OCD,
right,
pitfall, they can't get out of it,
right,
because it's
right.
The valley is literally deeper than other people's brains.
And when I work with people around these trauma patterns, I can get to several causal points. The causal points, we're just talking something like a house and walking and childhood trauma. But I also see these causal points, or these tractor valleys, if you are, can be ancestors' imprints that are in the body. You don't even know why you're responding the way you are, because the environment stirs ancestral imprints that are chemical in the body, or you get an illness because these ancestral imprints in the body are in chemical soups that are also on dead viruses. They get triggered, suddenly you get sick, or you have past life issues. To me, the most challenging of all the imprints that are really, really hard to change, you just can't even see what it's about, are either they dovetail really young events all the way back to the womb, coordinated with soul issues, coordinated with ancestral issues. And now it's so confusing for a person, a client, a student, because they can't even figure out why they keep acting like they are, because there's multiple reasons or multiple coping mechanisms happening.
And that's where the constraint-led approach works so well, because now instead of trying to because the flaw in a lot of systems is thinking that we work based off of active memory, when our system would be too slow to react to life with active memory.
Yes, it's not active memory. We're aware of sometimes how we're acting, but it isn't really present day. The brain hasn't even fully engaged.
And because of that, there's now what we get when we get into like the skill acquisition side of things. And if anybody like wants to do more research on it, go read any of Rob Gray's book. He's one of the leading researchers in skill acquisition and sports science. Works at ASU. He's written 4 books. I've read one of them. I'm reading another one. He's just because this is he's just one of the leading researchers on all of this right now. But anyways, is that active memory fails because we don't live based off of active memory. We live based off of environmental cues with pattern recognition from the past. And what the constraint-led approach is basically taking now, let's take this, like, we want the rainwater to get to the lake now.
Right.
What I could do is I could go maybe create a trench. I could create a trench at the start of this well that diverts the water that runs down through into the lake. That would be an environmental constraint. I have now taken the environment and I've manipulated it for a desired outcome.
How would that look with energy healing? I mean, I understand it. Say somebody has an alcohol addiction, you just avoid driving past the bar. You always needed to stop in.
Yeah. So that's one example. I don't know exactly because that's not really my field, but an example that I've used with you is like training our dog Carl is I'm not going to expose him to a higher stimulus environmentally than he's culpable, that he's ready for. So when training him, he does really good when I take him around the block. I've trained him in this environment so much now that it is starting to become autonomic. He knows to stay by me. He knows to heel. Even if he's off lead, he knows to stay near me. Now, sometimes the environment then gets too loud, and this is what's called noise. This would be noise. And noise in this case would be another dog in the lawn. The environment has now become more stimulating than his nervous system is capable of retaining. And that noise overtakes the signal, and the signal in this case would be me and me rewarding him with treats. And that noise is now so loud that he's going to go for the noise and forget the signal.
So what I would do working with somebody around environment, say they're getting out of an abuse pattern that has been set up that they go for carbs in, as the substitution for what they needed, which was safety, just to make it super simple, or ice cream or whatever it is. Environmentally, what it makes sense to help somebody figure out, how can you make your physical environment different than the one that you grew up in? What colors match what colors really match your true self, your soul, your real spirit, your personality, keep you calm, help you be yourself, help you not trigger into that other dynamic. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's lots of really practical ways people can work with environment, but they can be internal. They can be subtle too. Imaging yourself in a safe place when you're going for pizza.
It's a very common one.
Right. Yep. Or having, it's more of a task, but using a few of the tools that I've developed that are very useful that get you out of the stimulation that's triggering you, even if you can't get out of an environment, a physical environment, right? Or the picture of pizza on this, there, or talking to your mother or whatever it is, like a tool that helps you reestablish kind of your sense of safety, your sense of self.
Yeah.
So it's easier to give yourself something that would be really good for you.
And a lot of these things are like,
Coming up.
when they're said and you talk about it a lot, I think like, well, yeah, that's kind of obvious, right?
It's not when you're in the middle.
But when you're in the middle of it, and what
Right?
I think, can you move him over? Because he's literally in front of the camera.
Okay.
But I think what it is it's understanding what levers you can actually pull.
Right.
So let's take all the entire pyramid now, okay? An organism, environment, task. And there's subsets in all that. So let's take walking Carl again, for example. So if I have him off a lead, his task now has a wide range of degrees of freedom. He can go do whatever he wants, technically.
You can go steal somebody's tulips.
Correct. Can you shut the door?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi. If you have to go to the bathroom, you can go upstairs. There you go. Hello.
But he has a wide range of degrees of freedom. He is capable of going and doing whatever he wants. The reinforcement movement patterns have been, I have now reinforced that this thing will be rewarded if he listens and he figures out the task that I give him, which is like, let's say I say, Carl, heal. I'm giving him a task to do. And if he does it, I reward him. And now I'm creating it's called a closed loop. I've told him what to do. He does it. I reward him for doing it. It has now closed the loop in his brain of, if I listen to this cue, the cue of heal, I get rewarded for doing this task.
Now, if I'm going to be I work with the subtle energetics mainly, but certainly with action and physicality as well. So what I like to do, and will be doing more of, is helping somebody figure out what means the most to them. Do you want me to shut that again?
That will be fine.
Okay. So what I like to do is help somebody figure out what means the most to them according to their inner nature. And it's not just the organism, it's their spirit, it's their essence. Because if they feed that, their own inner self can start to have a little bit more management over their perceptions and their actions. Really, it can be as simple as, what's your main chakra that describes who you really are. And if you start to make some choices based on that, then you're better able to change or to move around your trauma patterns. You're better able to make healthy decisions when you need to, instead of having active memory and patterns and the trauma take over.
So, you know what's funny is you just self-organized.
Did I just self-organize?
So, on the camera, you might not be able to hear, like anybody that's listening, is there's like a air filter or something, and it's really loud in the door that just got opened. That's why I
Because
asked.
Garfield opened up,
So Garfield opened the door,
which he
and
likes
the environment
to do.
shifted, and it got louder, and you started talking louder.
Oh, that makes sense.
So, and you're not thinking about that, right? That's an example of self-organization.
Right.
But I guess it's understanding what levers you can pull, because now it's like, if we take Carl, for example, if I have him on lead, off lead, I have to understand he has a high degrees of freedom, and I have to understand what a level of stimulation in an environment he can handle. So he loves to bark and chase dogs, and we're working on that right now of like not pulling, but he does. So if I see a dog in the environment, I can't give him the same task that I would if there's not, because he won't respond the same way. So the task I alter is I put him on a lead, and now we create another feedback loop where today, for example, when I got back from walking, the mailman was walking.
Oh, we don't like the mailman.
And he doesn't, I think it's like an excitement thing.
Yeah.
But this was a hard one, but he hurt himself because he bolts. And I saw the mailman, so I put the lead on him because we were walking back without the lead. Put the lead on him. And now he knows I reward him when he walks with me with a loose lead. So he knows that task is there. He knows that the feedback loop is there because I do that. And I don't tell him to things. I just say yes when the lead is tight. If he creates tension and he loosens the tension up, I reward him. So he knows the game. But the game of the game for Carl of chasing after the mailman is more enticing than the game of keeping the lead loose. So Carl lunges and jumps and he sprints at the mailman, and I just, I hold my ground steady, and he jerks back, because he ran out of lead and he decided to bolt and run against the lead. And I didn't, intentionally try to pull or anything against him, but like I'm now creating a feedback loop of like, this game that you're trying to play is going to get punished. Not in the sense of like, I want to hurt you.
But he's hurting himself.
I'm not going to let you jump at the mailman.
Right.
And immediately after he takes tension out of the lead, I now reward him for taking tension out of the lead.
Right.
And now I'm creating a positive feedback loop of in this environment, and now this new task of don't jump at the mailman, I'm now creating a positive feedback loop.
So we're taking these ideas and somehow configuring them along with Gina and the other people in my company. We're configuring them into basically a systemized approach for people to generate new lives, new behaviors, and new lives with input that has to do with what's the nature of your soul. What's your strongest chakra? What means the most to you? Because we can even automatically respond to situations by feeling unworthy. And it's sort of like, oh my gosh, here's this person who mocked me when I was a child. I immediately go into unworthiness, right? So I don't know if we know exactly how we're doing this. We're creating assessments, we're creating tools, we're creating ways to support people from the inside to the out. If they need to change the environment, what do they change it? How do they change it? Kind of how can they really create real change? And we're starting to adapt a model like this.
So, and I would even reframe it like, we're not adapting anything because this is already
done. It's already a system.
It's already, it's a system that people have more or less discovered, but the system, again, is not special to us, and it's not special to any singular person. It is a I don't want to say universal,
but it's an explanation of how we are.
It's a universal theory.
Right. And it works for everybody.
Yes.
And anybody's.
Yes.
And cats and dogs, though cats don't want to
And there's some really interesting data about like how birds fly in unison through self-organization. That Rob Gray talks about that in his first book. I can't remember much about it, but anyways, all we're doing now is just becoming more present to the system that already exists and building structures around that system to actually make it more manipulatable. And
to make it, the bottom line is easier for clients, for students to use certainly physical energetics, but subtle energetics to improve their own lives. That's the goal. And because we can, in subtle energetics, draw on other tools, right, than an athlete that's getting trained. An athlete that's getting trained may raise their arm, do more swimming, do Pilates, add this weight, do this weight, etc. We've got accessibilities in the subtle energetics that aren't necessarily going to show up in that. Getting a guide to help, kind of doing deep heart connections. I just think there's a lot of freedoms within the subtle energetics that haven't been adapted to this universal, how do we really make change? How do we really improve our lives? How do we make our lives better, simpler, and feel good about ourselves?
Yeah.
So that's the undertaking that we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't really, maybe somebody's done it. I don't know. I'm not aware.
Well, you know what it is it's I would look at it like this. Everybody's doing it already.
Well, it's how we live.
It's how we live.
Make choices.
It's how we experience the world. What the difference is like, let's take a jiu-jitsu gym. Okay. So again, where I train at in my gym, we strictly follow the CLA.
You need to say what CLA is.
CLA just stands for Constraint Led Approach.
Okay.
That is basically
Which is what we're talking
everything
about.
we're talking about.
Organisms, tasks, and environment.
And all we do is we go play games. Hey, before you can go for a takedown, you have to get inside head position. Before you can take them down, you have to get your hands around their hips. Your win conditions are inside position, hands around hips,
right,
and then to the ground. I have to go in that sequence.
Right.
Training specific actions of that. The last gym I trained at was blocked training where he went and did it.
Right.
Where he showed us what to do, and then we practiced doing that specific thing.
We're trying to get out of that, where I'm just showing people what to do.
Yeah.
But it's like helping it be innate and unique and self-generating.
Yeah. Because the thing about, like, he's showing us what to do in the gym, right? And we go and drill it, and we do the drill, and we're like, okay, like, I get how to do this thing. But now when I go and roll against somebody live, I haven't been exposed to real life enough with that where I can actually apply it. The great thing about a game now is when I go and roll against a sparring partner and we play a game of, like, get inside head position first and then you are allowed to do a takedown, that's still a constraint. I'm still, the constraint is still pushing me towards the desired outcome, which is win the inside head game. Mm-hmm. But I have to do that now before I can do a takedown. But that is still a live repetition because he is still trying to beat me too. We are both going 100%. And it's more transferable than when we stop.
That's what we want to make subtle energetics. Yeah. So it's transferable.
Yeah, that's.
So what we're doing when you're in a class and you're going through my spirit to spirit or doing quantum patterns or kind of doing a past life regression, how do we make those ideas transferable into your real life where there's actual, where you can grow, where you don't have to go back to a class, or you've learned enough, or you learned something that's going to work in real life. How do we transfer this so next time somebody's mean to you, you're not in an automatic subtle trauma pattern? You're like, oh, I'm going to do this. You don't pull against the lead like Carl does and like choke yourself.
Yeah.
We're putting these together. You probably have a better sense of how we're going to do it than I do, but I like this important goal because the idea is living life more enjoyably with more freedoms that are healthy and self-sustaining than trauma pattern reenactment.
So I'm going to give anybody who's listening now a task or a constraint to do with one of your practices. So in the caption below, there's going to be the Spirit to Spirit guide. Go click on it. It will guide you through on how to do it. Here's a constraint for you to do with Spirit to Spirit. Set a timer and do it in only 3 minutes. Take a rest, do it again in 3 minutes, take a rest, do it in 3 minutes again. That constraint is training the ability to connect to it in a real-time manner. So that's a time constraint. So I can manipulate time with how long I give it. So like an example could be like in the jiu-jitsu realm, right? Of like, I want to get my head to chest in as many times as possible in 30 seconds.
Right.
So I'm going to have to sacrifice other things to get my head inside, but I'm training a specific skill.
Right.
So in this specific skill, it would be how quickly can I access my higher self or my guides?
So wouldn't you want them to do it for 3 minutes, then 1, and then 3 seconds?
No, because it's here's the thing is training. There's now this is something that we can talk about more in your system is
Yeah.
there's training and then there's the game.
Right. There's the real life.
There's real life.
Right. There's
When you go-
learning something, then there's using it in real time experience.
And the goal is to get training to transfer over to real life.
It is. It
now,
is.
for it to get it to transfer into real life, we have to hit this tightrope of the training cannot be at all like the game.
And you never do have 3 minutes to do spirit to spirit in real life.
And the game at the same time also has to be intense enough and live enough for it to replicate what the game would be like, or like what real life would be like. So an example would be as a college athlete, I cannot replicate what it's like to be in the bottom of the ninth in an actual baseball game. I can't do it. I can't replicate what it's like to have a hitter that is a future big leaguer hit against me, unless I have access to one. I can't replicate what it's like to have all those things. But I can create situations that can get it as close as possible to that. I don't want training to look like the game, because the game is so isolated and it's so high stress. I need to make trainings. I'm training situations in a live container experience that exposes me. So an example would be, let's say I want my training to be harder than the game, but I can't ever make it harder than it is. And what I mean by that is, like, I can make it harder, but I can't make it harder in the emotional sense.
Right.
I can't make it harder in the stress environment sense of, like, my first ever college start was against North Carolina.
Right.
And I gave up a first pitch home run to a guy that was drafted 10th overall.
Yeah. I remember that.
There is nothing I could do in my training that would replicate that.
No.
But I can make my skill set better by making my training harder. And one aspect I could do that is, a mound, you pitch from 60 feet, 6 inches away. So if I want to make it harder for me, where I have to execute better.
Right.
I have to sequence better. I have to choose the right pitches better. Well, what I could do is I could move the mound a foot back.
Right.
Which gives the hitter more time to see the ball. So now I have to elevate something else to overcome that.
So they're going to start with 3 minutes, 3 minutes, and 3 minutes.
Yep.
And then later,
they could go for 2 minutes. They could go for 1 minute.
But first do 3, 3, and 3 and get it into the system.
Correct.
Drink it in.
Because it's the same way of, like, you wouldn't have somebody that's never lifted before
lift 200 pounds.
Exactly.
I lift 3 pounds.
It's progression. It's regressions and progressions.
Exactly.
And now we see, like, all the different variables come together.
Right. Make sure you include this. This is important. Yeah. But then later we'll help people do basic spirit to spirit, which is the most important key for subtle energetics. And then later we'll work it a different way.
Yeah. And start doing this one specifically in a very low stimulus place.
Excellent.
Because you can always create a more stimulating environment.
Right. You can always stress yourself more.
But if you stress yourself too much, again, we care about survival.
Right.
If I am stressed out to a certain extent, I will fall back onto my most ingrained
So
patterns.
Don't push it in the beginning.
No. Build up to it.
I got it.
So then you're strengthening that muscle. And now I'm not saying you're going to go into an environment where it's hard
and you're automatically do it.
You're not going to be good at it right away.
But don't expect it.
But don't expect to be good at it right away.
Right.
I had my first jiu-jitsu competition a couple weeks ago, right?
Right.
I'd been training had been going really, really well up into it. And then I get to the competition and it's a new environment and there's
Right.
hundreds of people there. It's hot, and I've never competed in a martial art before.
Right.
Or let me rephrase that. It's been almost 20 years since I've competed in martial arts.
Right. I remember when you did,
Yeah.
when you were little.
Yeah, I did really good at it.
Yeah.
But I got too overstimulated from the environment.
Right.
Now, I could walk away from that, and I felt disappointed, right? But that's part of the learning process is I've never been in an environment like that before.
Right.
So the only way for me to get exposed to it is to expose myself to that environment, fail, go back to bad patterns, and then reevaluate and go, okay, this is where I can improve my game. And
Right.
now next time I go, I've been in the environment.
So helpful for people to hear that in the way reality works, it's okay to fail because it's just more data so that you can guide yourself
And I
even
think,
better.
now that being said, there is a balance of like, you want failure to,
Well, you don't want only failure.
well, you don't want only failure, you want positive feedback loops. You know,
Right.
I think a good ratio of like things, actually, I'm not going to put that ratio, but what I'll say is this, is that you also have varying levels of failure,
Right.
right? Like if you fail so bad that you get a job, like you get fired
Right.
from a job,
You don't want to go
that's
that
a
far.
different level of failure than
Right.
going to like if I went to jiu-jitsu competition and I got my arm broken in the first round,
You're not going to want to go again.
that's not little T trauma that helps me grow.
Right.
That's big T trauma
Right.
where now I'm scared to go back to a
So
competition.
it's a growth process.
Yeah.
So start with spirit to spirit, 3 minutes, 3 minutes, and 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Come back and we'll keep developing. It's a really important, it's the most important subtle body tool.
Yeah. So that's a super easy constraint that you can put on yourself. How quickly can I access it? How long do I need?
But first start with slow.
Yeah. Yep. So you'll learn the constraints on how to do things and
Perfect.
Things like that. So I think we're all good though.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, just check the caption below and the exercise will be there. See you guys next time.
Thank you, Garfield.
That was great.
That was really